Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to Match Day. I'm Vince, and we have Ian. And our special guests today are Dr. Ron Quinn and Sam Snow. So, Dr. Quinn and Sam, can you just say hello? So we know we got.
Hello, everyone. Yeah. Hi, everyone.
Perfect. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the National Youth Diploma. And before we get started, I mean, Ian and I think we've shared on several match days that for me, this course, when I took it, totally altered my thinking and totally changed the way I approached coaching. And it is truly an impactful course. And pretty much everyone that I've ever heard taking it comes back and say, oh my gosh, it's the best course I ever took. Right. And that's a credit to, both of you. And Dr. Quinn, obviously, your contribution in helping write it with Dr. Carr and the late Dr. Tom Fleck. And it's amazing the impact that this course has made in this country. And then I know Ian kind of feels the same way, but I just want to say thank you both for coming on. We're really excited that United Soccer Coaches is bringing this diploma back, and hopefully we can deliver more of this as the years go on. Coach Barker?
Yeah, trying to establish just how many 20 years ago it was, but when I took the course, having got my A license and other badges, there's no doubt it's the most valuable coaching award I ever took. And my understanding of some of the science is pretty much a layman level, but if I had to come up with just one theme, the notion of developmental appropriateness and really starting to look at my athletes from their physical capabilities, be they 6-year-olds or collegiate athletes, and then their cognitive abilities, and then that sort of socio-emotional piece, just some of the most, and distilled down in a way that was very accessible to all of us, even if we weren't scientists or in the theoretical side of the game, we're much more in the applied side, but it's the best coaching education course I ever took.
Yeah. So, well, thank you. So we'll go and get started. And so we'll have maybe Dr. Quinn, since you were, one of the original authors of the course, talk about maybe how it even was formed.
Sort of last man standing, so to speak.
Yeah. I was going to call you the OG.
Yeah,
but
right. Yeah. No, well, I'll tell you what, we are just delighted that the United Soccer Coaches has decided to continue with this particular course, because as you know, and I think a lot of people know, that particularly with Tom Fleck at the helm, and in addition to Dave Carr and Sam, and then we had Virgil Stringfield and Bill Buren, it really was, it wasn't just a course to us, it was really in some way our life's work. And for that to be able to continue on with the United Soccer Coaches is really something that, again, we are really looking forward to. And we certainly appreciate the comments that you've made with regard to the course. And as I said, we just I think part of one of the success was that it was really probably the first course that took a developmental approach rather than a soccer approach, and we'll get into that a little bit more. So, went from the license and then to the certificate with USU Soccer, and now to the diploma. So I'll just quickly defer over to Sam to kind of continue with that train of thought, and then we can get in talking a little bit more about the refresh and what we call now the National Youth Diploma.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Vince and Ian, for having us on today. The course began in 1995 under the direction of U.S. Soccer, but it was from the get-go in the house of USU Soccer in terms of helping to underwrite the pilot course and get it up and going. So for quite a few years, it was run through the coaching department at U.S. Soccer. They then, when USU Soccer started its coaching department in the early 2000s, turned over the administration of the course, but they still issued the license. So when I became the technical director for USU Soccer in 2003, we started to administer the course through the state soccer associations as the hosting organization, and through that we were able to conduct on average 17 courses per year, and on average about 400 or 500 coaches per year going through the course. And that's when it was initially still the National Youth License. Then U.S. Soccer decided to let that course go, and U.S. Youth Soccer took it over completely, and it became the National Youth Coaching Course, and was a certificate. And when U.S. Youth Soccer dropped its coaching department at the end of 2018, I got in touch with United Soccer coaches, and we were able to work out the details. And it's now a United Soccer Coaches Diploma, and we did our first one this past January down in the Fort Lauderdale area, and it's up and going and doing very well. And we're looking forward to doing more once we all get back out onto the field and are over this COVID situation.
Yeah. Thank you. So what I'll do is I'll start the presentation, right? And then I'll have you all just kind of go through it. So you should be able to control it, Dr. Quinn or Sam.
All right.
And go from there.
Sam and Ron, just so you know, we've got a gentleman, Casey Schaefer, says he's looking forward to taking it. Ian McCallum took it in Minnesota in 2007. Mark took it from New Orleans in 2000. And then we have a gentleman, Andrew from Virginia, who was going to actually take it with Gordy and Paul Shaw this month, but we had to cancel it because of COVID. So Andrew's excited to listen in because he's going to be taking it here in the very near future.
Well, then, Andrew, don't get too bored when you actually attend the course and you go, I've already heard this part.
Yeah. Well, except usually we take about an hour on the title slide, so we'll have to speed things up. Right here today. So I don't know if we have that much time. But one of the, I think one of the key things with this particular course, as I mentioned earlier, it wasn't so much about coaching soccer. It was really about coaching the child. So it wasn't. We started really with the overall assumption that we had no, misgivings that we weren't. It's not that we were going to teach a 6-year-old how to play, soccer. It was all about how do we teach a 6-year-old. And so one of the things is that we again looked at the literature, the child development literature, and the various theories, developmental theories, instructional theories. And that's why I'm not going to read all this, but basically, and it's not to turn this into a college academic course, but it's really about how often have we observed something and then said to ourselves, well, why is that happening? Why does one player react this way, another player react this way? Why is someone, picking it up quickly and another person have that, repeat it? Or what is the role of the coach? Or what is the, we've talked about Vygotsky in terms of cognitive development. How do kids, process information? So we wanted to not only take this literature, but we wanted to then connect it to the game. And then this way it also gives us all a common language, right? It gives us a common language. So if we're talking about now what we're, let's say, Vygotsky of zone of proximal development, then we have an understanding of the role of the coach that then, moves the individual, to a point where they remain out of a comfort zone and into a learning zone prior to, a panic zone where we know we can't, where we sort of push them beyond. And then we see that a lot happening today with regard to burnout and dropout. So it really was always about connecting the gap, right? It was always about connecting the gap between the academic side, but also the practical side of how it is applied. And I think that's been, I would say, probably the strength of the course really to date,
Absolutely.
And so one of the things so as it has evolved, where we again looked at Piaget, how do kids process information? We've talked about Erickson, psychosocial development, and what are those various stages that they go in, just so that coaches are more familiar with it. So now in this refresh, I think something that has always been part of the course, but again, we didn't really have a name for it. And that's this whole thing of ecological systems theory that Bronfenbrenner, actually I think from Cornell, of essentially of looking at the interactions of that nothing happens in isolation, and that is the interaction between the individual and the coach as well as the environment. And Sam, if you want to do, I don't know where you want to come in at, or.
Yes, thank you, Ron. And one of the things that, as we look at this slide, that we are putting into the revised curriculum that we're now have with the National Youth Diploma is that we're taking a look at what is the environment of the player. We still talk a lot about the player. We still talk a lot about age appropriateness and what are the characteristics of the age groups, because certainly coaches need to know the nature of each player that they're coaching. And so we start with just what's the nature of the age group. And if the coach understands that, the coach can better adapt his or her coaching method and style to the demands, the needs, the realities of the age group. Another piece that we've put in now is what's the environment like? So certainly for the player, there's an environment at home that influences the player. There's an environment in the team, the teammates, coaches, team manager, practices, games, then the environment of the club, the environment of the town, etc. So we're taking this on a broader scale as to talking about essentially one of the next big paradigm shifts that we want to try to influence in the United States is the environment of the club. What's the soccer culture of the club? And so that's where we're expanding from the graph that you see on the screen right now, and where a good bit of the new information in the course is going.
Okay. So as you just mentioned, that essentially it's looking at these other processes that interact, particularly I think today with regard to COVID-19. How will it's going to be even more important that children feel secure and safe and welcome when they come back onto the field. So all of it is certainly going to influence their perception, their behavior, and their growth overall. So essentially, though, the question then is why. How does this connect it? And as we mentioned earlier, that we realize that, again, you're not just teaching someone how to play the game. You have to start with how do I connect with that individual, and how do I help that individual learn the game, from their own perspective. And so that includes, the social, emotional, psychological, environmental, and as well as a coach, we also say that from a sort of an ethical perspective, that we also have to realize that almost every decision that a coach makes has some type of an ethical component to it. Whether it's playing time or how we organize groups and things of this nature. So we're going to, as coaches get back onto the field, there are going to be more things that I think coaches are going to need to attend to. And so this was, so I'll describe this in total, and then Sam, if you want to come in on that, we'll sort of go through those different levels and kind of go back and forth if you like. So this is our, so in that regard, from the very beginning, our central theme, mission, was this game in the child. And that was all centered around how do we bring the game from within? How do they establish a passion? How do they take ownership in their own development? How do they in some way construct the game for themselves so that they're able then to become a self-learner and be more self-aware? So that's really where philosophically the game in the child came into play, rather than trying to take a child and insert them into an adult structured environment where the adults make all the rules. And so what we've done recently in modifying this was introduce the ecological theory as an overall umbrella in which this approach influences in all these other blocks here. And in some way, this diagram, the model is similar to a certain thing of John Wooden's pyramid of success in terms of these building blocks. But this conceptually is our goal is to how do we get to the top where the child now begins, where the game kind of flows out from that individual.
And with that thought in mind of how does the ecological theory, as you see from the diagram, it is holistic. It encompasses everything that's going on in the soccer experience. And if you look at the bottom row, the centerpiece is organizational structure and culture. That could be from the individual team itself, then certainly also the club itself, and perhaps depending upon the age group, maybe it's a league, other teams that individual team is playing. What's the influence of the club, the league, the region of the state itself? All these pieces influence that organizational structure, but most importantly, the culture. So culture is a part of it. What's our American soccer culture? What's the soccer culture of your community, of your state? And then what's the soccer culture of the individual club and the individual teams? And one of the things that we're trying to evolve out of the new curriculum is to have more of our soccer clubs guide, intentionally build their own soccer culture and not just let it happen by accident or not paying attention to it. And then you have all of these teams within the club with their own individual cultures, but it's nothing collective. And then we build from there. One of the biggest pieces that was a game changer in the 90s when the course was first put out to the public is about athlete-centered learning environment, player-centered training, player-centered games, and approach to coaching. And that's impacted one of the next pieces that you see above with teaching coaching methods. And that's still a big piece of the current National Youth Diploma that we get across to the coaches. So when you take the course, we go out onto the field and actually work with kids of that age group. You have a practice with other coaches, with the coaches in the course and the instructors in the course, where we can really dissect what we're doing. But then later in the day, the candidates in the course actually work with 5-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 11-year-olds on different days. So you get a chance to really work on your coaching method. And that's still a big lynch piece of the course. Vince? No audio, Vince.
Sorry. The microphone was off because my dog Oscar was barking in the background. He's really mad right now. But back to the kids, I correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was the actual first coaching course that we actually used kids, right? The coaches actually got to work with children.
Yeah.
And not only that, but we got videoed, right? and we actually went through reflection. Oh, imagine that. And we did that, many years ago. Yeah. So, I mean, it's been a trendsetter, right? And in my opinion, right, for where actually coaching education is now, where the U.S. Soccer requires all grassroots courses now to have kids, and so you two were pioneers way back then. But I
have the coonskin cap to prove it as well.
Well, let's continue on. I just wanted to reiterate that was the most impactful part for me was I'm working with 7 and 8-year-olds, and actually, Ron, your son was in my group.
I remember that, yeah.
And we're at Xavier University,
and he's 30 now.
Okay, we didn't have to mention that, but no, I just remember walking away. I'm like, that was unbelievable, and I haven't worked with 7 and 8-year-olds that much. And, and then getting feedback from you because I coached your kid, and it just, it's amazing.
He's recovered. He has recovered.
Yeah, I know. That's good. I had hair back then too, but I was probably about 25 pounds lighter. But no, but thank you so much. And no, let's keep going for a few more minutes. And and by the way, comments are flowing in. It's wonderful.
Okay. Yeah, I think we can probably just finish with this slide. I don't think we go back to the. Go back. Yeah. So, and I think thanks, Vince, for that, because it was important to understand, the characteristics of the kids, and you can lecture all day about these. These are the behaviors, but until you actually see it live, because those kids, in some way, your credentials mean nothing, right? And so they're all like, "What have you done for me, like right now?" And so it was really an eye opener. And in that very, very first course, we did it as a pilot. In 1995 at Xavier, we actually then brought kids into the room and we actually interviewed them. And I wish we still, and I think I don't believe we recorded it, but some of the, out of the babes of, the mouth of the babes, but it was just incredible just listening to their feedback on the session. So with regard to the model, we really looked at learning through play. Right. And so we wanted to create an environment that was natural for the child. And standing in line, dribbling in and out of cones is not a natural environment for children. They seem to learn that later when they're in the grocery store. But it's not natural to the sport environment. And I think one of the challenges that we had to moving from a coach-centered environment to an athlete-centered environment, that we had to convince coaches to let go a little bit, who always want to have control of the entire environment, and that just doesn't match up with child development and behavior. And so children are very comfortable with chaos. It's just the coaches that are having a hard time with it. And so we have to embrace that chaos a little bit more, and because learning is messy, and learning does not. If a practice went really well and you hit all your marks, they probably didn't learn much,
right?
Right? Yeah. Right? Because if they were learning anything, it wouldn't have gone so smoothly, right? There would have been mistakes, and so that doesn't mean that we should design lousy practices or not be prepared. But we should be prepared for allowing the kids to, that again, let it come out from them a little bit more as we introduce various game activities, not drills, but game activities that tap on at their developmental level, and then see where they take it. So.
Yeah, no, thank you. This is great. We can talk all day. I just love listening to you two. Mark in the chat box made a really good point. And Mark, I can definitely relate to what you're saying. Mark said that the lessons that he learned from the course helped him as a parent and not just as a coach. Mm-hmm. And I can say that for me, it was 100% true. I'll never forget, I came back from Xavier University and my U10s, and my son was on the U10 team, and I'm running the session and we played Get Out of Here. And afterwards, I mean, the kids were buzzing, and my son on the way home, and we never tried to talk about practice on the way home, right? It was just, let's go eat somewhere and all that. He was like, Dad, he goes, that was fun, and then I'm thinking to myself, well, my gosh, what about the other 90 practices we did before then? Later, fun. But it helped me at home. It helped me, I started to use guided discovery a little bit more with them. Mark, I can definitely relate to what you're saying. So I'm going to, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, thank you, Mark. That's a great observation.
And I'll chip in, Vince, that I've heard that also from a number of coaches over the years, that even one coach who said he called his then 20-year-old son and apologized for the way that he coached his son when his son was 8. And all that. So it definitely has an influence beyond the soccer field.
Oh, unbelievable. And a couple things. So I don't know if you've realized, but you have some really famous alumni, right, of this course. I mean, we just had last Friday at this time, we had Jerry Yeagley and Todd Yeagley. And Jerry Yeagley took this course.
Right.
And here he was, a legendary college coach.
Yes.
He won national championships. But Jerry Yeagley was scared to death working with 5-year-olds. And he will tell you to this day, he was petrified because he's used to college players. You know, and we can go on and on. I mean, Ian Barker, obviously a famous alumni, you know, and, you know, but who others, right, that you can think of, just famous alumni that besides state directors, of course, that you can remember?
Well, we've had a number of Division I coaches. I just can't, you know, we have, I mean, and a number of college, you know, college coaches, and we've had some professional coaches, I do believe, different times, and then a number of international people, various times.
You can look right now at the technical staff at both United Soccer coaches and U.S. Soccer, and all of them have been through that course, all of the American ones anyway. And we've also had, as a course, had quite an influence on our neighbor to the north, particularly in Ontario. A lot of those coaches have made the trip down to the U.S., as well as Ron says, coaches from other countries. I did not have him in the course, but I know of a national staff instructor for the Japanese Football Association. Intentionally came to the U.S. to take that course in order to go back to Japan and implement some of what he learned in the course into their coaching education. So it's had an influence in a number of different places.
Yeah, it's just amazing the impact of this course, you know. And Michael has a really good question. I'll just read it for you. You know, first off, he says, excellent work. Are there any other development theories being introduced to the course this time around in addition to, you know, EST, or any removed from the older course? And if so, why? Any other things?
Well, I'll say this first. There's a number of the things from the previous curriculum that we kept because we talked to former candidates in the course, former instructors of the course, and got from them, hey, here's some of the really big key pieces that had such an influence upon them. So as a consequence, it's a revised curriculum, but there's a lot that's still in there from previous courses. So things, as an example, Jean Piaget's theories on cognitive development, Lev Vygotsky's theory on zonal proximal development, as two examples, are still in the course because of their direct applicability to coaching out on the field and understanding the characteristics of the age groups. But Ron can touch a little bit on.
We're continuing that. I think also the Bandura's, you know, social learning theories, you know, is added in, and we continue to do that. I think also what we're we now have discussions regarding development of expertise, and so looking at some of Erickson's work on the expertise model with regard to deliberate play and deliberate practice. All right, they have those 4 stages actually, but the first stage is play, unstructured free play, and then deliberate play, which is really where most of the course finds itself, and that's where it's the balance between structured and unstructured, not a lot of direct correction at that time, but again, it allows all of our game activities would fall under the deliberate play component. What has happened seems that this notion of the 10,000 hours, 10-year rule, which was never intended to be a rule, it was just a guideline, but unfortunately has taken on a life of its own. That has individuals have taken the notion of deliberate practice that needs to be effortful and not fun, and they've tried to start that with the 7-year-old, and that just doesn't work because they haven't had the other 2 phases, and they're not necessarily chronological in age, but they are stages in which they must go through. And then in their model, they have a bridge which is called structured practice, which is the bridge between deliberate play and deliberate practice. And that's usually about the middle school time, which again is a time of great change for that individual. So I would say that probably a greater emphasis is on the importance of the game activities and why. That it's just not, here's a list of fun games you can play, and kids are like, well, they can, you can find that anywhere, but it has to be intentional. It has to have a particular, what are you still trying to achieve? Even if it's, although we have decision making in all of our activities, but what types of decision making is it? Are they more direct thinking or indirect thinking, or are they an opportunity for some creative thought? And then the way they move, and that they're moving in a variety of ways rather than just, the game is 360 degrees. So it's not just up and down. And so I would say that it's a great question. And that's why we're so excited about this. In some way, is sort of our third iteration in a way, where really this was an opportunity for us to go back and look at the curriculum and now begin to, how do we refresh it and update it? So.
Yeah, thank you. And I think, Michael, too, correct me, Sam, if I'm wrong, but we talked about, a little bit of TGFU in there, teaching them understanding, a little bit of skill acquisition.
Yes.
And Boss, you came up with something a little bit different from play, practice, play. You kind of give it a different spin. I don't know if you remember that. We talked about, yes.
Which boss are you talking about?
Well, just real quick, and following along on Michael's point about being a better parent, getting exposed to self-determination theory all the way back then makes you a better in relationships too, right? So I'd have to say that my interpersonal skills improved because of this course with people that were not 6, 8 years old too. So one of the things about, play, practice, play has a place. Street soccer, as Bill Buren used to teach us, had a place. The scramble format had a place. I think some of the wonderful methodologies in there that we as candidates could share with the grassroots coaches, because you're not typically going to get not always going to get the mum and dad grassroots coach, but just using a game at the beginning to allow the kids to blow off steam, make sure that you've got finally at like 15 minutes after 6, you've got I've got 7, because sometimes there's 5 and then it becomes 8 and then it becomes 6. So just using some of the ideas for management of the environment as well as the enjoyment and the development were all things I got from the course and used to this day.
Yep. So, guys, thank you so much. We've been on for longer than we wanted to have you come on, and you've been very gracious with your time. And by the way, and it was asked by Casey. We're creating an online version, right, of our advanced level courses, and this too will be one of those courses that we will develop, where it'll be like in a 4-phase format. So part of it will be online, pre-recorded. Part of it could be a Zoom call with Sam or Dr. Quinn, right? And then you're in a cohort of 8 to 10 coaches. So that's kind of the vision that we see for this course going in addition to what we already have, right? Which is the 2-weekend model or the 5-day model. So, no, thank you so much. I could ask you a real zinger right now, because one question I keep getting, and I'll be honest, if we can do it in 60 seconds, it'd be great. As we return to play, some recreation associations are worried about 5- and 6-year-olds and the physical distancing aspect, right? So I don't know what to really tell them, except maybe we don't do it until it's completely 100% safe for them to be on the field. So
you're not going to get kids that young to not get next to each other, touch each other, play with each other, and such. So the organization's got to make a decision. Is it, hand sanitizer at every water break, which are frequent with that age group? Cleaning shared equipment at every break, etc. So you're just got to, again, understand the nature of the age group.
Make sure everybody has the ball and put more goals on the field, and they're all going all different directions. You won't have to worry about it.
There you
go. Beautiful. Thank you so much, you two. I can't thank you enough, and we'll talk soon. And then, so later on today, for those that are brave enough to come back on, it will be TGIF with Ian Mulliner, Samantha Snow, Stephanie May, Ian, myself, and then we're going to have Mrs. Allison Pronsky is going to be one of our guests today. And she is the queen of our organization, just telling you right now. So
yeah, she does great work.
So anyway, hope to see some of you at 4, but if not, have a wonderful weekend. And Dr. Quinn and Sam, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah.
All right.